May 2025. Estonia, NATO's largest ground exercise in years. 16,000 troops, 12 allied nations, Challenger 2 tanks, Apache helicopters, HIMARS rocket systems. Billions in combat power assembled in one place, against 10 Ukrainians and a tablet. Within half a day, those 10 operators had mock destroyed 17 armored vehicles, executed 30 separate strikes, wiped 2 full NATO battalions off the battlefield. NATO never found them, not once. When it was over, one NATO commander walked off the field and summed it up in 4 words: "We're fucked." This wasn't a drone demonstration, this was a reckoning. This is the story of how Ukraine's Azov brigade and elite drone units walked into NATO's biggest exercise and quietly exposed everything the alliance had gotten wrong about modern warfare. Hedgehog 2025 wasn't a small drill, it was the real thing on paper. Estonia, a country sharing a 294-kilometer border with Russia. A country that watches the war in Ukraine and knows exactly what that border means. NATO designed the exercise around a single scenario. Full Russian invasion across Estonia triggers Article 5. The entire alliance fights back. Maximum force, maximum realism. The firepower on display was staggering. British Challenger 2 tanks rolling across Baltic terrain. Apache attack helicopters circling overhead. HIMARS multiple launch rocket systems staged and ready. A British brigade and Estonian division forming the main assault element. Coordinated logistics, real command structures. Everything as close to actual war as exercises get. 10 Ukrainian drone operators were invited to play the opposing force. Their equipment? Compact FPV drones. Commercial-grade quadcopters modified with shape-charged warheads. Each one cost a few $100s. And a battlefield management system called Delta. Delta is the key. It isn't just a drone controller. It fuses drone reconnaissance feeds, satellite imagery, and ground intelligence into a single real-time picture. It had already been clocked in Ukraine, compressing the time from target detection to strike launch down to 2.2 seconds. 2.2 seconds from spotted to struck. The NATO battle group had no idea that clock was already running. The Ukrainian drone team powered up, started surveying the NATO formation. What they found was almost unbelievable. This is what the drone camera showed. Challenger, 2 tanks parked in open clusters, no camouflage netting, no natural cover. Heat signatures blazing from uncovered engine compartments. Supply tents pitched in exposed terrain, fully visible from altitude. Fuel and ammunition vehicles grouped together at predictable points. Full columns advancing in daylight on defined routes with 0 overhead drone coverage in either direction. One exercise participant described it afterward. The battle group was simply walking around, not using any kind of disguise, parking tents and armored vehicles. That was the picture. Every vehicle, every position, every route, all of it sitting in the open. Now, let's look at the lethal implication of that visibility. The Ukrainian team got to work. Delta processed the reconnaissance feeds in real time, identified targets, assigned priority, coordinated strikes across the 10-person team, each operator flying toward a separate objective while the system tracked every engagement simultaneously. FPV drones dove on armored vehicles from above, targeting the weakest points, turret junctions, engine compartments, optic systems, the same angles the team used every day in Donetsk. The same profiles that had already destroyed hundreds of Russian vehicles on the real front line. NATO forces had no effective counter. Their air defense systems were designed for helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft, too slow to track small commercial-grade drones flying erratic courses at low altitude. Radar systems optimized for larger signatures never detected them. Soldiers on the ground heard nothing until impact. Within the first few hours, the Delta system had built a complete picture of the NATO battle group. Supply lines, command vehicles, armor concentrations, fuel points, everything is mapped. Everything was prioritized. By half a day in, the score was 17 armored vehicles mock destroyed, 30 separate strikes executed across the formation, 2 full NATO battalions rendered combat ineffective, and the Ukrainian team? Still unlocated, still operating, invisible throughout. The entire 5-day exercise passed. NATO never found them, never neutralized a single operator. These weren't specially selected soldiers pulled from a laboratory program. The operators who showed up in Estonia came from units that have been fighting this exact kind of war for 3 years straight. Units like the Azov Brigade, officially the 3rd Separate Assault Brigade, and the Nemesis 412th Unmanned Systems Brigade. What makes these units different isn't just their drone count, it's the entire operational logic built around unmanned systems. In Azov's Doctrine, no armored vehicle moves without drone reconnaissance first. Full stop. Before a tank rolls, an operator checks the sky picture, weather, enemy positions, jamming environment, active threats. The armor is secondary. The drone coverage is the operation. Everything else follows. When Russian forces hit Azov positions near New York and Donetsk with heavy electronic jamming to blind their drone systems, the brigade didn't pause. They deployed new technology specifically designed to cut through jamming frequencies and continued. While other Ukrainian units faced pressure, Azov held. Not 1 meter ceded. That same mentality walked into Estonia in May 2025. Nick described the moment it started to click for NATO commanders watching from the sidelines. They became interested. They understood. It no longer works like that. Tactics need to change. Here's the number that reframes everything. Ukraine scaled its drone production from 2.2 million units in 2024 to 4.5 million units in 2025. Estonian pilots who embedded with Ukrainian operators during the exercise calculated that Estonia alone would need roughly 200,000 drones per month to match wartime consumption rates against the kind of threat Ukraine faces daily. 200,000 per month. For one small Baltic nation, NATO as a whole isn't producing anywhere near that number, not even close. And that gap isn't just industrial, it's philosophical. Western militaries treat drones as support assets, tools that assist conventional operations, add-ons bolted onto existing doctrine. Ukraine treats drones as the central axis around which everything else rotates, infantry positions around drone coverage, armor moves through drone-confirmed corridors, artillery strikes drone-identified coordinates. The entire battlefield logic flows from what the drone operator sees. In the Hedgehog exercise, the Ukrainian team didn't support a larger operation. They were the operation. 10 people, a tablet, and a system that compressed 3 years of combat experience into a real-time targeting engine. NATO brought a conventional war machine to an unconventional problem, and the Ukrainians exploited every gap. Because they were visible, they were effectively dead within 30 minutes. Every open position the drone camera captured in that survey, already assigned, already queued, already flying toward it. That's not an exaggeration. That's the timeline Delta operates on. Nick, the lead Ukrainian UAV platoon commander, described flying toward his first group of NATO infantry. 10 soldiers standing in the open, a drone closing in. Not one of them moved. Not one looked up. Not one sought cover. They did not understand it was a threat, he said. If there is a threat from the sky, you need to take cover as quickly as possible. If you are spotted, consider that you will be 200 ED killed in a jiffy. That's the consequence of visibility. Not embarrassment, death. The breakdown had 4 specific causes. First, no instinct. NATO troops had no counter-drone reflex, no habit of scanning the sky, no automatic dispersal behavior when a drone appeared. Ukrainian operators build that instinct through necessity because the alternative is a shaped charge through the roof of their vehicle. Second, predictable movement. Large convoys, defined routes, armor in logical positions, supply vehicles at obvious points. Everything a targeting system would look for, exactly where it was expected. Third, reaction instead of anticipation. NATO forces responded to drone strikes after they happened. Ukrainian operators anticipate threat cycles, move constantly, and operate below detection thresholds before engagement begins. Fourth, no mass in response. One Estonian FPV drone eventually reached a target tank. Ukrainian operators watching said 8 to 10 drones should already be inbound simultaneously. One drone is an inconvenience. 10 simultaneous drones is a kill. The production logic and the tactical logic are inseparable. Estonian Reserve Major Sten Ryman summed it up. The old tactics, large formations, daytime convoys, are no longer viable. A brigade, he said, could lose the majority of its combat equipment in a single evening. Not over days, one evening. NATO didn't leave Estonia in silence. The discomfort in those after-action reviews was the point. Estonian Lieutenant Colonel Arbo Probal, who runs the country's unmanned systems program, said from the beginning that the exercise was designed to create maximum stress, procedural breakdown, and tactical failure specifically so that gaps could be identified and fixed before they cost lives in an actual conflict. The NATO-Ukraine Joint Analysis, Training, and Education Center JTEC is now incorporating Hedgehog's lessons directly into Alliance Doctrine updates and force structure assessments. Retired General David Petraeus, speaking to the Wall Street Journal, was direct. The lessons from this exercise can't be absorbed by simply buying more drones. What has to change is everything. Doctrine, training, force structure, procurement, simultaneously. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen said something remarkable publicly. The only expert right now in the world when it comes to anti-drone capacities is Ukraine. A NATO head of government, publicly, calling Ukraine the teacher. That's how significant this shift is. But here is the uncomfortable truth no doctrine update covers quickly. The gap between recognizing the problem and closing it is measured in years. The production capacity, the trained operators, the embedded drone logic that comes from surviving 3 years of high-intensity warfare, that doesn't transfer through a seminar. It transfers through exposure to the real thing, which is exactly why these 10 Ukrainian operators in Estonia mattered as much as any diplomatic summit. 10 operators, half a day, 2 battalions gone. The Challenger 2 tanks didn't fail because they were bad tanks. The Apache helicopters didn't fail because they were bad aircraft. The NATO soldiers didn't fail because they were bad soldiers. They failed because the entire operational framework around them was built for a war that no longer exists. A war where the sky watched, not a war where the sky kills. Ukraine changed that equation starting in 2022. Units like Azov and the Nemesis 412 were the first to absorb that change, build doctrine around it, and weaponize it against every adversary they faced. In May 2025, they brought that doctrine to Estonia, and NATO got 3 years of hard-won Ukrainian lessons compressed into 5 days. As one Azov commander put it, those that adapt faster to changing battlefield dynamics will prevail. 10 Ukrainian operators just demonstrated who is adapting fastest. Drone warfare isn't evolving slowly, it's accelerating. And what happened in Estonia in May 2025 will look like the opening chapter of a much larger story within 12 months. The rules of engagement are being rewritten in real time. If you want to stay ahead of every development, the tactics, the technology, and the doctrine shifts no mainstream outlet is covering, secure your future briefings. Hit subscribe. Every video on this channel is your intelligence update on the battlefield changes that actually matter. Smash that like button. Share this with anyone serious about understanding where modern warfare is heading. And drop a comment below. Should NATO permanently embed Ukrainian combat veterans into every active brigade for mandatory drone warfare training? Or is the real answer flooding the battlefield with mass production? One answer changes doctrine, the other changes manufacturing. Pick your side. Thanks for watching Battlescope. Stay sharp, stay informed. And remember, in modern warfare, the first thing that kills you is always the thing you were trained to ignore.